The morning my son opened his cafe in Queenstown without me was the morning I understood that I had spent 3 years building someone else's dream with my own 2 hands, and that no one had thought to save me a seat at the table. The world tilted sideways. I did not know it straight away. I only knew that I was standing in my kitchen in Christchurch, still wearing the jersey my wife Margaret had given me the winter before she passed. I had put it on without thinking, the way you reach for familiar things when you are trying to hold yourself steady. Dark green, a bit worn at the cuffs. The world tilted sideways. She had bought it at the farmer's on Colombo Street and told me it brought out my eyes, which I always thought was generous of her because my eyes are a fairly ordinary shade of gray, though had worn it because I told myself it would photograph well. The pictures my son would send me from inside the cafe, steam rising from the espresso machine, the chalk menu board his partner had designed, his face the way it looked when something finally came together after all the hard work. I had texted him that morning just before 8. He did not reply. I tried calling at 8:30 and got his voicemail. At 9:10, his partner rang me back. The world tiltus was the same as it always was. That particular warmth that I had learned too slowly usually meant he was managing something rather than sharing it. "Hey Alistair," he said.
Not Dad.
Not once in 4 years had he called me Dad. Always Alistair in that easy way that made it hard to say anything about. "So look," he said. "The opening was actually last night. We kept it quite low-key. Just industry people, a few media contacts, the reviewer from the Otago Daily Times." I set down my mug. "You kept it low-key?" I said. "Yeah." The world tilted sidewide. The right energy for the first night, you know. Trade people, a couple of influencers. You want to get the buzz right before the family stuff. The word know what the right energy was. The worry knew was that I had transferred $18,000 to my son's account 14 months ago so he could cover the bond on the premises and the first fit-out costs. The knew I had gone down to Queenstown on a wet Thursday in June to help him and his partner move commercial kitchen equipment up a narrow staircase because the delivery company would not take it above ground level. The world tilted. I knew I had driven back with a pulled muscle in my shoulder and said nothing about it. The world tilt. I knew I had written a check when the espresso machine turned out to be the wrong voltage for the building's power supply. The whirl. I had transferred money again when the council required additional ventilation before they would grant the food license. The world tilted sideways. I knew there had been a payment for new chairs when the originals were damaged in transit, and another for a refrigeration unit that stopped working 2 weeks before opening. "When's the family thing?" I asked. The whir, still locking in the date. "Probably in a few weeks. We'll let you know." He rang off before I could say anything else. I stood in my kitchen for a long time. Outside the window, the world tilted sideways. The kauai in the back garden was just starting to come out, small yellow flowers that Margaret had always watched for because she said they meant the tea would be back soon. The tree was doing what it always did, indifferent to the rest of it. The world tilted sideways. I went to the bench and poured the rest of my coffee down the sink. Then I stood with my hands on the edge of the bench and looked at the car in the driveway. The were I had almost sold 8 months ago to free up money for the fit out before I decided to pull from my term deposit instead. The word about the Sunday evenings my son used to ring me from his flat in Wellington before he met his partner, when we would talk for an hour about nothing in particular. His work, my garden. The world tilted sideways. What I thought about the cricket, what Margaret might have said about some piece of news or other. I thought about how those calls had shortened over the last 3 years. The world tilted sideways had become something I arranged rather than something that happened naturally. How holidays had quietly changed from assumed to tentative. The world tilted myself. That was what happened when your child built his own life, that it was healthy, that I should be glad. I had talked myself into quite a few things that were not true. The world tilted savin. I did not eat much. I sat in the armchair in the lounge, the one beside the bookshelf where Margaret kept her garden journals. The word myself, be honest, for the first time in longer than I wanted to admit. My son and I had been drifting since his partner arrived. Not dramatically. No argument, no single moment. The world tilted sideways, narrowing of the space I occupied in his life, until I was mostly a resource to be drawn on when something went wrong. I had noticed it and had told myself it was a phase. The world tilted side again and told myself it was the stress of starting a business. The third time I noticed it, I opened my laptop and transferred the money he needed. The world tilted sideways because money felt like the one reliable bridge between us. It was always accepted. It was never questioned. And it made me feel for a day or two like I still mattered. I knew, if I was being honest with myself, that it was not the same as mattering. The world tilted sideways. At midnight, I went to the filing cabinet in the spare room. Margaret had always kept things in order and I had taken that over after she died. The world because it needed doing and partly because it felt like a way of staying close to how she had kept our life. I pulled out the folder I kept for my son's business. Transfer records. The world confirmations, receipts I had photographed and saved to a folder on my phone. The kind of record you keep when you tell yourself it does not matter, because he is your child and you love him. The world but something in you keeps the receipts anyway. I added it up at the kitchen table with a pen and a notepad. Not on my phone, not on the computer. I wanted to feel the numbers. 46,000. The world $200. I wrote it out in full and sat looking at it. The world tilted 7 deposit we had been saving for the trip to the South Island's west coast that Margaret had wanted to take before she got sick. The one we were going to drive from Westport down to Haast and stay in those small motels she had found in a travel magazine. We never went. We kept saying there was time and then there was not. The $46,200 of my retirement, given in pieces small enough that each one felt manageable. The world tilted sideways, but sitting together on a notepad at 1 in the morning they were something else entirely. I folded the paper and put it in the inside pocket of my coat, the one hanging on the hook by the front door. The world tilted sideways. I might need it. The next morning I did not answer my phone. My son rang just before 9. I watched his name on the screen until it stopped. Then I got dressed, drove to my branch on Papanui Road and asked to see the manager. The world tilted sideways. She had worked at that branch for as long as I had been a customer, which was close to 20 years. The world tilted sideways. She had the manner of someone who had heard a great many things across a desk and had learned to take none of them personally. I need to remove myself as a guarantor on a business loan, I said. The world cancel the linked payment authority on the account that's not mine. She pulled up my records, typed for a while. Then she sat back and looked at me. That's a significant step. The world tilted sideways. Are you sure I am? Can I ask why? She was not being intrusive. She was asking in the way someone does when they want to understand whether there is something they should know for the paperwork. The world tilted sideways. I said I found out I wasn't invited to the opening of the business I funded. She was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded, turned back to her screen and said, "Right. Let's sort that out." The world tilted sideways. Took just over half an hour. Each cancellation felt like loosening a knot that had been pulled tighter over 3 years without my quite noticing. The standing transfer I had set up temporarily and kept renewing. The overdraft cover I had agreed to after the refrigeration incident. The word till guarantor arrangement on the small business loan that my son's partner had walked me through quickly at the kitchen table one afternoon, papers spread out, pen already in hand. The world, people present things when they want them signed before you have time to think. When it was done, Diane printed the confirmations and handed them to me in a small neat stack. "Take care of yourself," she said. The world tilted sideways down even though the Canterbury wind was cold coming off the plains. My son rang twice that afternoon. His partner sent a text that said, "The word you call us when you get a chance. Important." I did not call. I made a pot of soup, ate it standing at the bench, and went to bed earlier than I had in years. I slept the whole night through. The world tilted sideways. Later they came to the house. I saw the car turn into the drive and watched through the curtain before I went to the door. Both of them. My son in a jacket I had not seen before. The world tilted sideways, folded across his chest. His partner a step behind him with his hands in his pockets and his jaw set in the way it always was when something had not gone his way. I opened the door before they knocked. "We need to talk," my son said. "Come in," I said. He sat at the kitchen table without being asked. His partner stood near the doorway with his arms still crossed, which made the kitchen feel smaller than it was. "The bank contacted us," my son said. "Your guarantor status has been removed. The loan's been flagged." "That's right," I said. "Why would you do that without telling us?" I looked at him for a moment. The world tilted. Fee 2 years old. He had his mother's way of going quiet when he was upset and a stubbornness that was his own. The world tilted sideways, and for 3 years I had watched both of those things directed more often at protecting his partner's position than at the truth of what was happening between us. "Did you tell me about the opening?" I said. He blinked. "That was a business decision." "So was this." His partner stepped forward. "Alistair, do you understand what this does to us?" The world could reassess the whole loan if the guarantor arrangement changes. "We're in the middle of building something." "I know," I said. "I've been in the middle of it with you for 3 years." The world tilted. "Second hurt the café," my son said, and his voice had the quality it used to have when he was young and frightened, the slight thinning at the edges that I had always recognized and felt. The recognized it now and I felt it now and I did not move. "I know," I said again. "Dade," the word. He had not used it in longer than I realized until I heard it. "The one need you. You needed me last week too," I said quietly, but I wasn't important enough to be in the room. The silence after that was the kind that cannot be filled with talking. The world tilted sideways. Partner tried anyway. He went through figures. Upcoming costs, outstanding invoices, a supplier threatening to delay the next delivery unless an account was brought current. The world tilted the way he always did when he wanted me to think of my checkbook rather than my principles. How much? I asked. Not because I was going to do anything about it. I just wanted to hear the number. The world tilted 2,000, he said, to get the accounts current and carry us through the next quarter. I reached into the inside pocket of my coat, still on the hook by the door. The whir unfolded the piece of paper. I walked to the table and smoothed it out in front of my son. He looked down at it. His face changed. That, I said. The world tilted sideways what the last 3 years looked like from where I was standing. He stared at the number. His lips moved slightly. His partner leaned over and looked and said nothing for a moment. Some of that was gifts, he said. None of it was a loan, I said, but all of it was given by someone who wasn't invited to the opening. My son looked up at me. The world still was something behind his eyes I could not quite name, shame perhaps, or something more complicated. The world tilted sideways. The way you look, you have been told a version of events for long enough that you have stopped checking it against the original. What do you want us to do? He said. They want you to work it out, I said. The way adults do. His partner exhaled sharply. That's not a realistic position, Alistair. We have staff, we have suppliers. We have rent. You have a business, I said. That's what you wanted. Now you have it. They left 20 minutes later. Not the way they had arrived, together and composed, but separately. The world tilted sideways, quiet, and his partner already on his phone at the end of the driveway. I watched their car back out onto the street. What I felt was not quite relief and not quite grief. The world tilted sideways, some more like the feeling after a long storm when you look out the window and find the fences still standing. Surprised and not surprised at the same time. I went inside and put the kettle on. My hands were steady. That surprised me a little. The world tilted sideways. The days that followed were quiet in a way that took getting used to. Not because it had been noisy before, but because I had not noticed how loud the anxiety was until it was gone. The wording for the phone to ring. The mental calculations I ran every time a message came through. The guilt I felt before they had even asked. The words, someone who puts out the umbrella before there is a cloud in the sky. All of that was gone. The house was just a house again, warm and mine. The world later. My son rang from a number I did not recognize. I answered anyway. My phone had to be replaced, he said when I picked up. His voice was careful, measured. I'm fine, I said. Dad. Pause. His family has a friend, someone who works in elder welfare. The world thinks it might be worth having someone come and check on you. There's nothing to check on, I said. The world tilt is concerned. He thinks since Mum passed you might not be yourself. The world tilt, the decisions you've been making lately aren't like you. I set the phone down on the bench and looked out the kitchen window at the kauai tree. The tea had come back. The world tilt, just as Margaret had always said they would. One was sitting on the top branch pulling at a flower. I picked the phone back up. Tell him, I said, that I appreciate his concern. I hung up. 3 days after that, a man in a dark jacket came to the door. The world tilted sideways. He introduced himself as a support coordinator from a regional well-being program and explained that he had received a notification regarding a recently bereaved older person living alone who might benefit from a welfare check. The world tilted sideways. He was thorough. He was standing on my porch because someone had made a phone call. I let him in. The world tilted, looked around the kitchen, the lounge, the stack of papers on the table. He asked about my daily routine, my sleep, my meals, whether I was finding it hard to manage things since my wife passed. He asked if I had noticed any difficulty with decisions lately or any changes in my behavior that felt out of character. I stopped funding my adult son's business, I said. If that's out of character, then I've been the wrong kind of character for quite some time. He smiled, carefully. Is there anyone you're in regular contact with? A GP, a friend? The world tilted sideways. I told him about my neighbor Colin, who came over most Monday mornings for a cup of tea. I told him about my GP at the Papanui clinic, the one I saw every 6 months and who had never once raised any concern about my capacity or my health beyond the usual things. I told him I had a functioning vegetable garden, a paid-off mortgage, the world till term deposit, and a refrigerator with more food in it than I would eat in a fortnight. The world tilted down carefully. When he left, he said he would close the file. He said I presented as entirely capable and clear. He also said gently, the world tilted sideways, that the person who had made the referral had been quite specific in their concerns, and that I should be prepared in case there was further follow-up. I thanked him and closed the door. The world tilted sideways. I stood in the hallway for a moment, feeling the shift in the air the way you feel a change in the weather before it arrives. Then I rang a solicitor. The name was Judith Ainsworth, and she had been recommended to me 2 years ago by the accountant who had helped me manage Margaret's estate. She had a calm, direct manner on the phone. The world tells you immediately that a person does not waste words. I told her everything. The café, the 3 years, the $46,000, the opening night I had not been told about, the welfare check, the phone call my son had made about decisions that were not like me. The world tilted sideways. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, the welfare referral, That's an opening move. They're testing the ground. If they've already framed this as a mental capacity concern, the world till next step is likely to be more formal. You think they'd go further, I said. I think your son's partner is the kind of person who does his research, she said. The world due to change your locks tonight if they have a key. Come to my office tomorrow. Bring everything you have. I drove to the hardware store that evening. A young man at the counter asked if I was renovating. Just updating things, I said. He nodded as though that made complete sense. The world tilted the new locks myself. Margaret used to say I was the most self-sufficient man she had ever known, and that it made me almost impossible to buy Christmas presents for. The world tilted sideways. I thought of her while I worked, the way I often did in quiet moments, and I was glad she was not here to see this particular thing. And then, in the same breath, the world's glad she had given me enough of herself while she was here that I knew how to keep going. The bolt clicked into place. I tested it twice. It held. 5 days after I met with Judith, the world tilted sideways. Corey delivered a padded envelope to my door. The return address was a law firm in Wellington. I opened it at the kitchen table with the letter opener Margaret had kept in the drawer by the phone. The world tilt a habit. Unhurried, the application was 11 pages long. Formal, precise, and devastating in the particular way that legal documents are when they are being used as weapons dressed up as concern. The world tilted sideways. A son's partner had filed an application in the family court seeking an order under the Protection of Personal and Property Rights Act. The world tilted sideways, requesting that the court appoint him and my son as my property managers and welfare guardians on the basis that I lacked the capacity to manage my own affairs. The grounds listed were detailed. Sudden and unexplained financial decisions, withdrawal from family contact without reason, signs of prolonged grief-related psychological deterioration, isolation. The world tiltual suspicion toward people who had only ever acted in my interest. Dramatic change in personality following bereavement. There was a supporting declaration from someone I had never met, described as a long-term family friend, who outlined concerns about my mental state. The world tilted sideways, statement from my son describing a conversation in which I had allegedly become confused and distressed, and had made comments that were inconsistent with my known views. The world tilted sideways. There was a declaration from his partner that read as though it had been written by someone who genuinely believed what they were saying, which was somehow the most disturbing part of it. I read the 11 pages, then I read them again. The world application succeeded. I would lose the right to make decisions about my own property, my own finances, my own medical care without their approval. My term deposit, my superannuation. The world tilted south, a house I had paid off over 31 years. All of it would pass under their management. Every decision I made for the remainder of my life would require their sign-off. The world, $46,000 I had transferred to them over 3 years would belong to the same people appointed to oversee my estate. There would be no account, no separation, no way back. The wife folded the pages into the envelope and drove to Judith's office. She read through the application in silence while I sat across from her. When she finished, she placed it on her desk and looked at me directly. This is not unusual, she said. The architecture is familiar. An adult child, a controlling partner, a series of interventions designed to look like care. Can they succeed? Not with what we have. The need to act quickly and document everything properly. The hearing is in 4 weeks. She told me what she needed. Every bank record and transfer confirmation, which I had. The letter from my GP confirming my medical status. A written account from the welfare coordinator who had visited and found nothing of concern. The tentative assessment from an independent specialist. Character evidence from anyone who could speak to how I was actually functioning day to day. My neighbor Colin, I said. Mondays. The regular as anything, for 10 years. Get him, she said. Who ain't? I said. The manager at my bank branch. She processed everything with me herself. Judith nodded. Good. Then anyone else who's had recent contact with you in a professional context. I thought about the welfare coordinator, my accountant, the specialist I had seen in February for a routine matter my GP had referred me for, who had found nothing out of the ordinary. There's a specialist, I said. Dr. Terence Okafor. Saw me in February? Get a letter, she said. We need to show the court a life. Relationships, judgment, the world tildance of a man making deliberate and rational decisions, not a man in decline. I thought about what my life looked like from the outside. A widower in his early 60s living alone. The world tilted sideways, just cut off his adult son's money. I could see how a story might be built from that. The story would not be true. But in a courtroom you do not simply assert the truth, you demonstrate it. What we have on our side, Judith, said is the record. And yours is thorough. The world tiltive assessment was scheduled for the following Thursday with a specialist named Dr. Priya Nair, whose rooms were on the 3rd floor of a medical center near Victoria Street in Christchurch. The world till measured, precise manner, and she asked me to tell her, in my own words, what had brought me there. I told her. The café, the 3 years, the opening, the $46,000, the World Fair visit, the court application. I told it in order and without embellishment, and she listened the way a professional listener does, completely. The world tilted small adjustments most people make when they want you to edit or conclude faster. I finished, she asked about my daily life, my routine, my sleep, whether I was eating properly, how I was managing the garden Margaret had kept. She gave me a short assessment. The kind with words to remember and a short sequence of tasks. The sort of thing designed to identify any gap between how a person appears and how their cognition is actually functioning. Then she sat back and looked at me. Mr. Ashford, she said, there is no evidence of cognitive impairment, capacity deficit, any psychological deterioration that would affect your ability to manage your own affairs. Your reasoning is sound, your recall is clear. The world to decision-making demonstrates both reflection and appropriate judgment. Can you put that in writing? I said. In the plainest possible terms, she said. I had not known quite how much I needed to hear it from someone outside the situation until she said it, and something behind my eyes stung briefly. Not because I had doubted myself. The world tilted sideways, but because for several weeks I had been living inside a version of reality where the people closest to me were paying a law firm to argue that I was broken. There is something that happens to you, the world, who are certain of yourself, when the people who are supposed to love you insist the opposite. Something that requires confirmation from outside simply to hold the line. The world tilted, stood and shook my hand. Good luck, she said in the way that means it. The world tilted sideways. Before the hearing moved in the odd way that time moves when you are waiting for something that cannot be hurried. Slow in the mornings, faster in the evenings. The wordeth filed our response and submitted the supporting documentation. The other side's solicitor filed a supplemental statement from my son's partner with additional details about my alleged behavior. The world tilted sideways, scribed with such confidence that I could see how a stranger might read it and find it plausible. Colin gave his statement on a Monday at my kitchen table with his tea, same as always. The world tilted told Judith's assistant that I was the steadiest person he knew. That since Margaret passed I had kept the garden going, sorted my own plumbing in November. Then never once seemed like a man who could not look after himself. If anything, he said, the world is sharper than me, and I've got no intention of going anywhere. Deanne at the bank submitted an affidavit confirming the circumstances of the account changes. The word arrived with clear purpose and complete knowledge of my accounts. That I had answered every question correctly. That she had observed no confusion or hesitation. The welfare coordinator submitted his file notes confirming that his visit had found no concerns, and that the referral had been inconsistent with what he observed in person. My GP wrote a letter that was 4 sentences long and left nothing in question. The world Tonfer wrote from his practice confirming that the test conducted in February had returned entirely normal results across all relevant measures. The world tilted sideways, and that there was nothing in my file that would support any concern about my capacity. On the morning of the hearing, I reached into the wardrobe without thinking and put on the dark green jersey. The world tilted sideways. I realized what I had done when I was already halfway down the front path. I stood there for a moment and then I went back inside and looked at myself in the hallway mirror. The Margaret had liked that jersey. She had said it brought out my eyes. I kept it on. The world tilted sideways. Judith was waiting outside the courtroom. She gave me the look that competent people give when they want to communicate both confidence and focus without words. They're here, she said. The world tilted sideways. I looked down the corridor. My son was standing near the wall with his arms at his sides, not looking at me. He had worn a suit I had not seen before and his hair was cut differently, neater than usual. The world tilted sideways. People dress when they want to make an impression on a room. His partner stood beside their solicitor, already reading something on his phone, already working. We went in. The world tilted sideways. The judge was a woman in her mid-50s with reading glasses on a chain, and the demeanor of someone who had heard every variation of every family story and had arrived at a considered position on most of them. The world tilted solicitor went first. He presented the case with practiced precision. A recently bereaved father isolated since his wife's death, displaying sudden unexplained withdrawal from family. The word financial decisions inconsistent with his established character, showing signs of grief-related psychological change. He spoke about me with what sounded like genuine concern. The kind that is built over many rehearsals. My son testified. His voice was steady, which I noticed. He described changes in my behavior over recent months. Withdrawal. Suspicion. The world toozled to communicate. Worry about my ability to manage on my own. He did not say things that were entirely untrue. He said things that were selected and arranged to tell a particular story. The world tilted thing and in some ways more difficult to answer. The world tilted sci-fi that he had always regarded me as a father figure. He said it without any visible hesitation. I thought of 4 years of Alistair, never dad, and I kept my face still. Judith stood. Your Honor, she said. The respondent, Alistair Ashford, is a retired structural engineer with 35 years of professional experience. He owns his home outright, carries no debt. The World's managed his financial affairs independently for his entire adult life. He is 63 years old in good health and has been assessed by Dr. The Werner as fully cognitively and personally capable. We have submitted her report and request that it be entered into the record. The judge accepted it. Dr. Nair gave evidence by video link. She was brief and precise, fully competent in all relevant respects, no basis for any finding of incapacity. The World tilted sideways. The welfare coordinator gave evidence confirming his findings and noting that the referral had been inconsistent with what he observed. The World tilted sideways about the morning I had come to the branch. That I had arrived knowing exactly what I wanted to do and why. That she had observed a man making a deliberate financial decision. The word a confused one. Dr. O'Kafer confirmed the February results. Colin spoke last. He was 67 years old and had a voice that did not hurry itself for anyone, and he looked at the judge and said, "The World tilted Sir Ashford has been my neighbor for 14 years. His wife passed 18 months ago and he planted her garden the following spring, same beds, same layout." The World tilted sideways, because that was what she would have wanted. When his water pressure dropped last winter, he diagnosed the problem, got the part from placemakers and fixed it himself. He cooks properly. The World tilted sideways. And he shows up when he says he will. I have never sat across from him at the kitchen table and thought, this man needs someone to make decisions for him. I've thought plenty of times I wish I had half his common sense. The World tilted was quiet after that. Judith entered the bank records. Every transfer, every amount, every date, the text messages from my son requesting each one. She entered the welfare report as evidence of a family-initiated referral that had found nothing. The World tilted sideline showing that every behavioral change listed in the application corresponded precisely with my decision to stop providing financial support. Your Honor, she said, the World this application describes as cognitive deterioration is in fact a 63-year-old man exercising sound and considered judgment. The pattern before the court is not a father losing his capacity. It is a father reclaiming his own life. The judge looked at her papers for a time. The World's application, she said finally, does not come close to meeting the threshold required for a finding of incapacity under the Act. She took her glasses off and set them on the bench. The word it does demonstrate is a serious misuse of the welfare and legal mechanisms that exist to protect vulnerable people. The World tilted a dim view of applications of this kind brought without substantive evidence of impairment. The records before me show a man who made a rational, documented, the World tilted decision to withdraw financial support from an adult family member's business venture. That is not incapacity. That is a choice, and it is entirely within his rights. She looked toward the other side of the room. The application is dismissed in its entirety. The World tilted sideways, that a summary of this proceeding be referred to the relevant authority for review as a potential instance of financial abuse of an older person. I am further noting in my order that any future application made against Mr. Ashford without clear evidentiary basis will be treated as a matter requiring the court's serious attention. The World vs. Son's partner's jaw was set. His solicitor leaned over and spoke quietly into his ear. My son had his eyes closed. The gavel came down. Outside in the corridor, Judith shook my hand and held it for a moment. Go home, she said. Rest, it's done. Thank you. I see you built the case, she said. Though I just organized it. I was nearly at the lift when I heard footsteps behind me. Dad, I stopped, turned. The World tilted sideways. My son was there alone. His partner was still inside with their solicitor. He was standing a few meters away with his arms at his sides, none of the composure from the courtroom. He looked. The World tilted sideways for the first time in a long time, like himself. Not the version that had been managed and polished and aimed at some outcome, just himself. The boy who used to ring me on Sunday evenings to talk about nothing much. I don't know what I'm supposed to say, he said. I looked at him. He told me you were struggling, he said. After Mum. The World tilted sideways. He kept pointing things out. After a while I could see what he was pointing at everywhere. I thought about that. About how a story told often enough by someone you trust, the World tilted sideways, becomes the thing you see instead of what is actually there. You didn't have to go to court, I said. I know. He looked at the floor. That was wrong. That was. He stopped. I'm sorry, Dad. The World tilted sideways. I did not tell him it was all right because it was not yet. I did not tell him we were fine because we were not yet that either. I said, I know you are. He looked up, the World, but his chin was steady, which meant he was trying, and trying was somewhere to start. Can we? He began. Not today, I said quietly. Give me some time. He nodded. The word and I turned and walked to the lift and pressed the button and waited. The doors opened. I stepped in. In the polished steel of the closing doors I could see my own reflection. Slightly blurred and warped the way reflections are in metal, but recognizable. A man in a dark green jersey still standing still himself. That was 4 months ago. The word rings on Sunday evenings now. Not every Sunday. Most of them. His partner is not part of those calls, and I do not ask why, and he does not explain. We talk about ordinary things. The World Tilted Sideways is going, a book I picked up at the library on Riccarton Avenue. What I have been doing with Margaret's garden now that the tomatoes are coming in. The World Tilted Sideways is not what we were before all of this. But it is honest in a way we have not been for a long time, and honest is a better foundation than the arrangement we had before. The world tilts the back fence last month. It took me most of a Saturday, and my knees reminded me about it for several days after. But it is straight and solid now. The world too. Every time I go out into the garden I feel the particular satisfaction of a thing done properly with your own hands. The world started going to a wood-turning group at the community center on Wednesday evenings. There are 7 of us. The world tilted sideways from a young woman who just moved to Christchurch from Dunedin to an 80-year-old man named Bert who says he has been meaning to take it up since 1992 and has finally run out of excuses. The world tilted sideways. Atur is patient with us, and we make a good deal of mess, and I come home with shavings in my hair, and I sleep the way I used to when my body had spent itself doing something real. The world tilted sideways. Last Sunday morning I made a proper breakfast. Eggs from the neighbor's chickens, tomatoes from the garden, toast from the loaf I had baked the day before. The world at the kitchen table with the back door open enough to let in the morning air, and the tea was back in the kauai tree, doing what teeth do, indifferent and magnificent. The war. I'm 63 years old. My house is mine. My retirement is intact. My locks are new, and I am the only person with a key. The world tilted to understand that love cannot be purchased with bank transfers, that generosity given out of fear of losing someone is not generosity at all. The world tilted sideways. A self is not the opposite of caring for others. It is the condition that makes it possible. The people who love you will not ask you to hollow yourself out to prove it. The moment you stop funding someone's comfort at the cost of your own dignity, you will find out very quickly what was holding the relationship together. My name is Alistair. The world tilted Simon. Years, when I sit in my own house in the quiet of a morning that belongs entirely to me, I am not waiting for something to go wrong. I am simply here,